How's it going, guys? This is JC with Hard Out At You. I'm back again with a new video talking about the new language I'm learning. So, if you've been watching my channel, I just uploaded my exit video, or quote unquote exit video, about my 3 month, I think it was, progress in Spanish. And, you know, that was basically, just showing the end of my progress. And when I say exit video, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily quitting Spanish, but I'm taking the focus off of it, and I'm not going to be actively studying it as much for the time being. I hope to pick it up again later. But anyways, this is going to be kind of like a follow up to that video a little bit, except it's not going to be about Spanish, but it's going to be about the new language which I'm starting to try and pick up and learn, and hopefully for the long run, which is Japanese. So I'm going to kind of talk about why I'm switching to Japanese in this video, just to kind of further explain my intentions, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my progress. That hasn't been very long, maybe a little over a week by now. But, I just wanted to talk about, why I'm studying it basically, and what I'm doing to study it, and just whatever else I feel like needs sharing. So, I studied Spanish for 3 months, as I said, and, the last month or two, I'm not, like I said, I'm not including, times I studied it before, albeit they weren't very serious times of study until these last 3 months. But the last month or and a half, maybe, or maybe it was just a month, I had switched methods. I've been really talking about the immersive comprehensive input method, of learning a language, and that was a lot easier for me to do with Spanish, just because it's the same writing system and a lot closer to English, and it's probably gonna be, in my case for sure, it was like definitely like the language that you know, I think it's a language that's gonna be really good to use that approach, just because you're gonna pick up so many of these either cognates or just really similar words to English or whatever your native language is. If you speak a Romance language, or something like English or something like that. But I enjoyed Spanish, but by the end of it, and not that I'm not saying it has to do with Spanish. It can happen with any language, It just I was getting kind of tired, and kind of wanted a break. My original plan was I was going to do 3 months of Spanish, or I was kind of taking it by spell. I wasn't really sure if I was going to keep going past the 3 months in the Spanish, but I was going to do 3 months Spanish, return to Indonesian, do 3 months, and but it's kind of went away, and I've kind of just completely changed my plans. So about a week ago, I started learning Mandarin, and I actually made a few days progress into that, and felt like I was having trouble. Of course, it was a whole new thing in which I was having to learn tones and things like that, and characters. And I'm not gonna go into why I was wanting to learn Mandarin, but anyways, I actually made the switch to Japanese a few 3 to 4 days after studying Mandarin, and that's what I'm going to talk about in a little bit, is why. Because I have many reasons for wanting to learn Japanese. I'm actually not the biggest fan of anime, but I know that's a reason a lot of people learn it. I've watched it some, but it's not my main reason. But you know, just to kind of turn to Spanish until I talk about more about Japanese. I recorded the progress video, and it's like I explained. Progress videos, like, they're good. It's good to see how far you've come, because it's hard. I haven't watched my first progress video in a bit, so it's hard for me to know how much it's improved, if it has. But it's if you study a language, my speaking may have not seemed to improve a lot, but I'm sure my reading has, for sure. And if I practice speaking more, hopefully, that my speaking would improve and I could turn a lot of what I know passively from reading, into things that I could use actively, but it's just something I haven't used with much practice. And I still plan to speak Spanish and Indonesian and some of the Malay I know, just to hopefully maintain what I learned. That way I can still maybe, Indonesian is a little more advanced, or I'm a little more advanced in Indonesian than Spanish, so I think I won't have to worry as much about it kind of going away, maybe some of the more obscure words, but I'm at the point now in Indonesian, like, there's still some grammatical things I don't understand, like prefixes and stuff. Some of them I still don't fully understand how or when to use it, but I think I have a decent knowledge of Indonesian grammar, so I'm more in the vocabulary building stage, and, just from speaking, and sometimes if I have time, just I've been using Anki more, and if I can use that a little bit to a point where it's not interfering with Japanese if possible, maybe all that in combination will help me kind of get better. Than if I get to a point where I feel like I can return the Indonesian, I think if I can just put more time into it, I think that'll improve too, hopefully, God willing. But anyways, mentioning Anki, I guess that's a pretty good spot for me to start talking about Japanese. So first I want to talk about why I'm studying Japanese. So over the past few months, or it hasn't just been a few months, but after Indonesian was kind of like the first language that got me into this whole community of learning languages, and started helping me to get exposed to other languages, just as I was looking up videos on how to learn languages and things like that. And Indonesian, it's, like I said, it's probably my best second language. Not that I'm fluent, but it's the one I'm most comfortable in. And, so, which kind of varies. I'm better in conversational Indonesian, but I feel like I could do better reading something a little more advanced in Spanish, maybe just because of the amount of similar words that I'll naturally recognize. But anyways, part of the reason I want to study Japanese is, I've been really interested in what I've heard certain polyglots or language learning YouTubers say, that once you learn one language, it makes learning other languages easier. And I could be wrong, but I feel like that's been true whenever I went from studying Indonesian to Spanish, because Spanish, the pronunciations in Spanish and Indonesian I've heard are kind of similar. Like, they're both pretty phonetic, so just about every word you see in Indonesian is going to be said how it's written, same in Spanish, which is a very big help. And they both kind of have similar ways of talking. They both roll R's. Maybe it might be a little different, but then some grammatical things. Spanish grammar is harder to me, but anyways, so Japanese is, I'm kind of hoping to use Japanese like that in a way to kind of help as a bridge to learning other languages in the future, because many of the languages that interest me are like other Asian languages, like Mongolian, for example. I know Mongolian and Japanese, they're both SOV, sentence structure, subject, object, verb. Now, I know that doesn't mean that every grammatical point's gonna be the same, but, I'm basically hoping that, by learning Japanese, some of these languages I want to learn, such as Mongolian, Turkish, I kind of hope to learn a couple Turkish languages too, maybe Uzbek or Kazakh in the far future. But, I'm basically hoping Japanese will get me, used to this whole sentence structure, and, maybe help me have a head start whenever I do get to the point where I want to delve into languages such as Turkish and some of these other languages. And, of course, that's not the only reason. A lot of it, like there's always just been really like this draw to me for me, like since I've started looking at languages to learn Japanese, just because obviously I know my reasons aren't unique. A lot of people like the sound of Japanese. A lot of people, for me, I really like the writing of Japanese and Mandarin. I know the kanji writings are the same as Mandarin. Meanings may be different, but I just really like the way it's written. It's pretty to me, and you know, a lot of my reasons for learning Japanese are kind of the same as other people. I just like Japan in general. It's a beautiful place, and you know, not that I know a whole lot about Japan, but it's just an interesting place to me. So I'm hoping it can be a bridge or a doorway for me to learn more about it. And obviously, I want to be able to speak it with others. That's one of my favorite things about learning languages is just the opportunity to make friends from different places, get to know other cultures, things like that. That's been one of my favorite things about studying Indonesian. Is I've made a ton of friends from there. They're really friendly people, and you know, it's just nice. It's introduced me to a bunch of new things, new foods, new places. And so it's just a nice thing. And you know, this is just Japanese is just like whenever I've been studying other languages, there's always been this part. It's like, man, I can't wait to study it. And like I really wanted to pull through, in the other languages, and be like, well, let me finish this first. And I'm just right now the way I'm taking it is I'm just kind of going around in circles, kind of building upon the foundations I have in these other languages, just trying to build vocabulary, grammatical knowledge, things like that. And now I'm starting Japanese. And, like I said, it didn't mean I'm done with these other languages. I still speak them and stuff. Just I'll be learning at a much slower rate. I hope to meet some people from Japan, online. I've been watching Matt versus Japan a lot lately. He's, all about the MIA approach, or, this whole immersive approach. And, he really says, like, you shouldn't speak early on. And I'll admit I have been trying to speak some Japanese, not really with other people, but just to myself, trying to come up with basic sentences. And, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to go about, just the whole speaking thing. I know his concern is if we speak early, it could cause us to have problems in our speaking that we'll have to deal with later on. But, as for how I'm studying Japanese, like, I've really been hammering on this immersive approach lately. Back when I was doing Spanish, and, it worked wonders for my Spanish. But with me being a beginner in Japanese, especially Japanese having 3 different writing systems, I've been, of course, trying to learn the hiragana and katakana, which are the phonetic ones, or the more, I guess you could say, phonetic. And I know some of the sounds can change, but I've been trying to learn it, and I can read it for the most part. Katakana, I really need to brush up on. I'm not as good at it, but I'm just, part of me is like I'm trying to build vocabulary. I've been using Anki, which is a very favorite app by many who study Japanese. And Anki, like, using it's actually like I may return with it when I return to apps like Japanese and Indonesian, because the thing with Anki, like, my problem in the past was like a lot of, I've talked about this when I talked about apps, you kind of have to work at the pace of the apps, especially depending on how much energy you're willing to put into it. Because even back when I was kind of double teaming Indonesian by using Duolingo and Babbel, I still felt limited, because like you can put as much effort as you want into it, in the You know, if you want to, like, if I want to really go at it one day, I can put a few hours in the studying Indonesian on Duolingo. And you know, obviously, if you know, I learned some from that, but you know, when it comes to Duolingo and these other apps, you know, it's just really slow. It works really slow for me. Even a language that I kind of have a better grasp on, because you know, like, I don't know, I don't really know why that is. It's just you're getting exposed to less vocabulary in the same amount of time as you could if you're doing something either by reading or, you know, using Anki. And Anki, like, I think it's gonna be good for me. I'll talk more about this in my next video, because I'm gonna re-record my video about Indonesian for beginners. Because for me, the biggest hurdle in Indonesian, and sorry, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but the biggest hurdle for me in Indonesian right now, I tried doing the immersive approach with it for a little bit, you know, or by reading, and a lot of the apps, you know, it's not. I wouldn't say it's hard to get started in Indonesian, you know, especially if you're putting yourself next to native speakers, you know, you can talk with, because you'll learn some from them. But you know, it's just like most of these apps, you know, most language apps, I'm sure, are kind of geared more for beginners, you know, getting you started. Like Duolingo, for example. And Duolingo will get you a pretty good, you know, arsenal of words you can use in Indonesian, for example, and probably even more in Spanish. But you know, it's not the most efficient route to getting to be more conversational. You know, and the biggest problem for me with it is I've just had trouble finding kind of in that getting in that spot where I'm between beginner and like advanced. Like if I had to rate my Indonesian, it's probably high beginner, low intermediate. Like, which it's going to vary on by level. Like Indonesian, you know, it didn't have verb conjugations or anything, so it's a lot easier to kind of get to a point where you're more conversational in Indonesian, especially if you're using the right methods. You know, my Indonesian, you know, I think it could have been better had I just been using the right methods, you know, not using things that were so slow, especially because it has an easy grammar. And a lot of it is just like, I'll say this, like, it's really a pitfall, you know, like, to do like I did and put a really big emphasis or focus on speaking with native speakers and thinking that's your study, you know, because really that's like that's where you're basically outputting all the input you have. And if all you do is just speak, you know, you'll make progress like I did, you know, like you'll learn how to put things like your passive vocabulary into active speech. You'll learn things, but you know, obviously your output's gonna be as limited as your input, and you know, like, so even though I did things like read movies or watch movies or things like that, you know, it just wasn't. I wasn't matching my input with my output. You know, I was having output daily for hours, but you know, I wasn't having that in input. So get back into Japanese because I spent too much time. Spent too much time on that. Japanese, it's really hard for me to do this comprehensive input approach right now, just because my vocabulary is small. Like I don't know how many words I know right now. I've only been at it a week, so you can't expect me to be too far. But you know, I've been using Anki, and that's kind of what I was going to say. I'm going to use Anki in the future, hopefully, for the other languages. But you know, Anki's been good because it's faster, in my opinion. My main tool that I've been using for now is Duolingo for Japanese. Duolingo, like, you know, I know I've defended it before. You know, it's not your one-stop shop to fluency or how you'd say it. Like, it's, you know, it's good to get started. You know, thankfully, I'm starting to understand like some basic, you know, patterns. You know, like I can introduce myself like Watashi wa Jimutsu desu, or Jimitsu. That's how I would introduce myself, and hopefully I'm saying my name right. I don't know if it's Jimutsu or Jimitsu, but you can correct that if you know. But obviously that's really basic stuff. And one thing I've been thinking about with Duolingo that I kind of like is, obviously like the tips and explanations, are going to be in English. But one thing I do like about Duolingo is, it's kind of limits how much English you're using, like you use it whenever you're answering questions, but like, I don't really know how to explain what I'm wanting to, but like with Duolingo, it kind of makes you have to think in the language you're learning a little bit, at least in my opinion, and that's good because there's been times where I would just be thinking, I was like, well, if I wanted to say this in Japanese, how would I say it? And instead of I could be wrong, maybe my memory's just bad, but if I remember right, like if I question something like that, my mind didn't snap to going from English to Japanese. It just goes straight to the Japanese patterns. How would it be said? Like I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but so that part I like. But the biggest hindrance with me and Duolingo is also good for learning the two of the writing systems, katakana and hiragana. I think it's good for that too. But the biggest hindrance with Duolingo for me is just the rate it goes, because you have to study what they want you to study. It works in a tree. Like you have to, which is not, of course, it's not a bad thing. Like of course, if you're a beginner in Japanese, you don't need to study all this really advanced stuff first. You need to try and start learning some of this more basic stuff, I would think. And so that's good, but it gets really easy for me to get tired out on there and to learn. Like, thankfully, most of the stuff it's been teaching me is actually stuff I could see myself using, like Gakko, which would be like school and things like that. But, I just feel like, it goes too slow, and I feel like that's where Anki's kind of filling in the gaps. It's because Anki right now, I think it's giving me 20 new words a day, and speaking hypothetically, 20 words a day for a week, you would have quite a few words. I think it'd be 140. Right? Oh no, it wouldn't be that. My math's bad. I'm counting my 25, not 20, but you'd be getting over 100 words a week, assuming you're retaining everything you're learning, as opposed to Duolingo, which, Duolingo is going to depend, on how, it's going to depend on, like, how hard you go at it, like, because it just, like, it introduces, like, only so many new words per lesson. And I feel like Duolingo is more of a supplement to just the whole scheme of learning a language. I think a lot of the times when people get angry at applications or really dislike them is when they put too much reliance on it. Duolingo is my main resource at first when I was learning Indonesian, but if I completed the Duolingo skill tree, of Indonesian, I wouldn't be fluent, and it's going to be the same with any other language, I'm sure. And so it's kind of what I've been doing. Like, I kind of want to get, maybe, like, I've looked at or thought about trying to get to the Genki textbooks. I know there's mixed opinion, but and one thing I need to do is just like trying to immerse more with Japanese, even though I don't understand a lot of it. Hopefully words will stick out to me. Like Matt versus Japan has said, about the mind. Like, hopefully the more I listen to it, more words will start sticking out in my mind with it. And that it can just help be something to help, and help me just get used to the language. As for difficulties in studying Japanese, it's nothing new. I'm not there's been other languages with similar grammars that I've tried before. I've heard people say Turkish grammar is kind of similar, and I've tried studying Turkish before, not much. So I mean, it wouldn't, and I've even tried studying Japanese before, but uh, none of them are very serious. But it's just I'm trying to think. It's just studying it. Like it's a whole new thing for me. Like none of the languages I've really seriously studied yet have had grammars that were just completely foreign to English. But it's just studying Japanese. Obviously the grammar is hard for me. There's particles I gotta think of how to use. Obviously, there's 3 new writing systems I have to wrestle through. 2 of them which are getting easier for me the more I use it, and which will help hopefully. But but obviously the kanji is like something I really need to start working on, and I'm trying to find the right way of learning kanji. I've seen there's 2 different things well, 3, I guess I'll say 3 different things I've seen for learning kanji. There's right now I'm using Anki, which Anki is good. It's I feel like I'm slowly kind of picking up more words from it. Like more general words, which is good. And part of it's just finding the right Anki deck to use, because the one thing I'm not crazy about my current Anki deck is like everything's in really small font, and when you're learning kanji, I'd rather have like the kanji like blown up, that way I can kind of remember the word more by the kanji than the sound of it, because I kind of feel like I'm remembering it more by the sound and the hiragana rather than the kanji, because the way it's working right now is the cards that I downloaded, it's got the kanji, the hiragana, or furigana maybe is the word for it. It's just showing how you kind of pronounce it out, and I feel like I'm learning it more by the pronunciation and the furigana and hiragana more than the actual kanji, which is what I'm wanting to learn too. So if you want to help me, you might link me some, like if you're studying Japanese, you may link whatever deck you use on or Anki, because I'm just trying to find a good one. And then the 2 other ones I've seen are, there's a website called WaniKani, which is it's kind of another progressive way of getting you accustomed to the meanings and learning kanji. And I tried it. They have a free trial. I haven't actually gotten to any kanji yet, hardly on there. It's just teaching me like some basic radicals, which is good to learn, but and I've heard mixed reviews about it too. I've seen some people who really supported it, and it sounds good, because they say you can learn 2,000, I think it is, kanji, and I think maybe 6,000 vocabulary. I'm guessing in around 2 years, and that sounds good. But Matt versus Japan, he did a video on it, and I haven't watched it yet, but he seemed to not really support their approach, if I'm right. And part of that, I think he said, I'm just saying it, I don't know if this is actually what he said, but I know he's really big on studying things in context, and that's how my Anki cards are laid out. Is it has sentences, but I can't really understand them for lack of vocabulary. And it's just trying to think. It's just hard for me to find, like, he supports using remembering the kanji, I think by Heisek, and I don't really know much about that method either. I think it's like a textbook, but it's just if you're free to share your opinions if you use these, I encourage it, or if you use something else. But it's just I'm excited about trying to learn it. Japanese is kind of it's more fun for me right now, because it's like, I don't know, some of these languages were like Indonesian, like I still enjoy it, and I still even study it a little bit, but sometimes languages can kind of get to these to these parts that are tiring because it feels like you're kind of doing it as a chore, not as something. Which a lot of that just comes down to my methods, and doing Spanish. I was still reading really basic stuff that isn't very entertaining, or compelling, and you know but Japanese, I'm not even at a part where I can really read much, other than what the apps have already taught on. But, it is enjoyable for me right now. It's almost like a game because, it's fun just to work with these new sentence structures, and all these completely new things. And, I know it's not impossible for me to get to the same point of Japanese where it kind of gets more like a chore. Anki's kind of been like that because Anki's really just it's about getting in there, doing your reviews, but it helps just like Anki, like I was thinking about it earlier. I was like, I just don't feel like this is really working for me. And for the kanji part, it may just be my deck, but I don't feel like my kanji reading is improved, and I'll just have to look and see what I can do about that. But I will say I have a lot of these words that I've kind of come to know. Like I've learned them. Like the word for understand, wakaru. Like it's just kind of cool. Like it doesn't feel like I'm making that much progress, but then I look back and I was like, these are a bunch of words that I didn't know and now I do know. And you think of like, I know I haven't, but assuming I've retained all the 60 words that it fed me in 3 days, I'm not saying I have, then that's 60 new words that I can use now. And for me, it may not be for you, but for a week's worth of studying, that's a lot for me. And assuming I can retain all the words I study in a week, then that'll go really fast. And the sentence part, studying it with sentences, I don't feel like that's something I've really been able to take advantage of yet. I don't really know what the right way of going about it is because I feel like I can't really understand the sentences anyways, because unless it's just something really basic, I don't know many of the words. But hopefully that's something I can take more advantage of later. I've kind of looked at some of the grammatical things of Japanese, like tenses and stuff, like mas, mashita, and some of those things, but it's something I'll just have to keep studying on. This video is getting kind of long. It's almost at 35 minutes, so I'm probably going to wrap it up. Sorry it kind of took me this long, and if you didn't watch all the way through, I don't blame you. This is me rambling on. But I appreciate you watching the video, I don't know that I'm going to really be doing a progress series for this, at least not yet, just because I'm still wrestling through if I'm going to try and do much speaking. I probably am going to do it once I see some of my Japanese friends here, but it probably won't be anything too serious. But hopefully you'll stick around on this channel just to see where it goes. Japanese, it takes a while, and it's just nice to see how Japanese can kind of help me to find things, just improve my other methods. I'm gonna try and do it for a little while. Like I'm not gonna really be actively studying Indonesian that much, but I do wanna. There's a deck I downloaded for Indonesian, and right now it's feeding me all these basic things that I already know mostly. So I'm having to just keep skipping through that, and if you know another way to skip through that quicker, please tell me. But I'm hoping I can use that to kind of bridge the gap where I am in Indonesian right now, just trying to get further into this intermediate stage and hopefully eventually to advanced. If I feel like I can get this deck to the point where it's feeding me new stuff, not basics, then I think it'll be good. But I'll just have to see. But then of course watch out if you're interested. I'm about to record a video for beginners in Indonesian. And hopefully, if you have any interest in that, or maybe you can watch it and maybe you'll just, it's going to be targeted for beginners of Indonesian or people looking at learning it. But, it'll just, maybe it could help you if you're learning something else. I'm not sure. But, anyways, appreciate you watching it. If you're a learner of Japanese or native of Japanese, feel free just to leave any comments, or anyone can leave comments, just tips that you would recommend me, or answering questions I did before, just anything. So I'd appreciate it. Anyways, I'll catch you later.